Brilliant. I think we're live again. Apologies for that slight technical mishap. But again, if you didn't hear the start, thank you all for joining this Black History Month session. I'm going to bypass sort of my introduction again and just go straight to Rochelle and Charlene. Just ask you guys just do a really brief intro to just kind of tell us a little bit more about your role, what you do, and then we'll go straight into some questions. Oh, Rochelle, do you want to go first?
Yeah, my name's Rochelle McPherson. I'm part of the Sky Early Careers team. And my role is quite a unique role in the sense that I solely just look after diversity. So it's all about looking at hires, how we recruit across early careers, so apprentices, graduates, interns, so that's down from work experience, and just really making sure I'm the voice for everyone, all the underrepresented groups across the organisation. So that's my role.
Perfect. So I'm Charlene. I am at KPMG. I am kind of have a bit of a dual role. So I look after the recruitment for London Audit, but I also lead on the programme delivery for our Black Heritage activity within student recruitment. And that means I work with a lot of our groups in IDSE, just try and engage with Black talent coming into the firm and Black talent kind of at university ages. So love what I do, and I'm really grateful to be able to do that as a job.
Brilliant, thank you both. So we'll jump straight into the first question. And it's, what initiatives and procedures have you put in place in your organisations to, I guess, just to improve the recruitment of Black talent and then the promotion of that talent once they're in your organisation? And Charlene, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So within a student recruitment space, we actually started probably about 3 years ago, focusing a lot on engaging with Black talent. We just knew that was a group that we wanted to make sure that we're engaging with and recruiting as many as possible. So we have the Black Heritage Talent Insight Programme, which is aimed at those who are going into final year who are of Black heritage, so Black or mixed heritage backgrounds. And it's a 3-day insight programme, and candidates kind of come in, they have some time to be mentored, they do a bit of work shadowing, they have some masterclass sessions, and then they're assessed on the final day, which has been just probably one of the highlights of my career is running that programme, because we've had such an incredible success rate of people who have now come into the firm as graduates. So that has been amazing. And then outside of that, just in KPMG as a whole, we are running something called the Black Heritage Mentoring Programme, which is a way for Black colleagues to actually mentor senior colleagues. We also have now an allyship programme, which I'll kind of talk a little bit about later, but there are a few initiatives that have been focused on recruiting and retaining and promoting Black talent within KPMG. And I think, with everything that's going on, it's been highlighted, and I was really pleased that we were already doing a lot of that work. So I just want to kind of continue that with you.
Oh, Charlotte, I think we lost the sound just at the end of that.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. We've got you back. We've got you back. Brilliant. I think you came to, I think you sort of answered that really well. Rochelle, how about you?
So within Sky, I think they do things slightly differently. So they look at diversity as a whole across all different streams, and how we do it. We have insight days, inclusion weeks that we kind of focus on in order to get Black talent in. So there's more of an emphasis on where we do our marketing and attraction. So for example, we sponsor a number of African Caribbean societies across all of our programs. We have partnerships that we work with specifically, so kind of making sure that they have a high percentage of Black heritage students at those universities, making sure the partnerships that we work with, we do kind of isolated instances where we have panel sessions. So we do Black heritage panels. We'll be doing work with our Black at Sky group. So it's not about our internal initiatives that we push out externally, because we need to make it as authentic as possible. And I think with Sky, because we're media, you really have to be careful how you message, because everything we do is picked up. So we've been very active in terms of our messaging externally. They have committed to putting 30 million into kind of the initiatives of hiring Black students. So we have quite a lot of funding, and how we're doing that is reaching out to the community, doing those sponsorships, partnering with different societies. We have an inclusion week that's actually live now. Thought I'd just plug that too. So we're just looking at various different options and how that works. But then internally, once you start, you are partnered up with our multicultural network. We have a unity program. They have events running. So on the pages, you go at Life at Sky, you can literally scroll through and there's inclusion tea with our senior people sponsors. You can sign up to do kind of an allyship. So there's lots of different things going on, and also our processes. So we've stripped out A levels. We don't look at that. We have strength-based only. So it's kind of, a lot of the initiatives are done. So we're looking at someone's innate strengths. And we found that when we were doing competency-based, it really kind of led itself to the elite kind of student that has mums and dads in the industry. And Sky were like, that actually doesn't help and it doesn't benefit underrepresented groups. So we found that by changing our process, providing a little bit more support. So we look at Black heritage students and we say, how can we work with you to upskill you? Where are you having adverse impact with the recruitment process? And then we give you that extra care so that you can get through to the final stages of the assessment. So that's how we kind of work at Sky.
Brilliant, thank you. One thing I forgot to mention as well to all of our audience out there, if you do have any questions, please feel free to send those through to us, and we will try and get through as many of those as possible towards the sort of the latter part of the session. So the next question is around kind of the networks that you have within your organisations, and you both mentioned various networks that you have. I guess a big perception from kind of underrepresented communities, the Black community, is that there's a feeling of not being listened to you know, within the workplace. If you have issues, if you have concerns that you want to raise, that there isn't necessarily a safe space in which to do that or a channel in which to do that. And I was hoping that you could both talk a little bit more around what you guys do in each one of your organisations in terms of those networks and in terms of giving you know, Black people a chance to, or a space to kind of air some of those concerns that they have and know that they will be listened to and actioned upon as well. Michelle, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I think we have so many diverse groups. So for example, we're working with them in different ways actually. So we've had the multicultural network, which has been going for a long time, in which is now we've moved to Black at Sky. We are partnering with parents at Sky because what we found, in order to really educate Black people and the roles that we have and to ensure that they can understand what they're getting into and how comfortable they're going to be, you actually need to speak to the parents, and especially for the apprenticeships, for example. I know growing up, you were kind of geared towards, right, you need to be an accountant, you need to be a lawyer. And if you deviated from that, your parents were like, what are you doing? This is not how it goes. And we found that by graduates, apprentices, when they're applying, they're all steered towards one path. So we really feel that the education piece starts with the parents. This is what we can offer. This is the qualification. This is the support network that they have. So we've worked with parents at Sky. We also are linking in, so the Multicultural Network and Black at Sky, we work with body and mind as well. I feel like mental health is really important. And I found that as Black people, we sometimes really find it difficult to have those types of conversations. So we're really making that open, inclusive kind of nature to say, it doesn't just start from, it starts within. Like, how do you feel? Like, let's talk about it. Let's have a group. We have a new Unity program as well. So the Unity program is really interesting. So every Friday afternoon, when you've got that downtime, they run these like TED Talks. Anyone can get involved. And they have the most deep discussions that sometimes I forget that I'm at work. I'm like, are we allowed to talk about this? And I think it's amazing because everything came out with Pure Gym yesterday, and that was a topic of conversation. And I thought, this is amazing. And everything was just like, what's your thoughts? How should we tackle that? And I think Sky are really brave in their approach to telling employees that it's okay to have these discussions and actually to be yourself, and for other people to learn and be educated. It's not just Black people in the group. And I think that's what I love more than anything, because they ask questions. They say, well, Rochelle, how do I approach this? What can I do about it? And that's the best way that you're going to get through to people. So there are so many networks, and obviously the Inclusion Week was last week. So you can go on Life at Sky, you can scroll down, and you can literally say how to get involved. We've just launched our diversity action group, and they've been put in place just to really look at how can we be better? How can we diversify our hires? They're working across the whole company to kind of look at different ways in which they can work with the organisation. So in terms of getting into the detail of what they're doing, I can't provide that currently because they literally just formed in August, but they will take on a lot of that strategic move and how it works across the whole of the divisions.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Yeah, so similar to that, we also have a Black network called the African Caribbean Network at KPMG, or the ACN for short, and they have been so active even since before kind of this period. And I think one of the reasons why, if anybody out there is watching and thinking of, you know, an accountancy firm, a professional services firm, how would it really be like for me to kind of be who I am. I grew up in East London, not far from Canary Wharf, and you know, you always go past Canary Wharf and you always wonder what it would be like. I remember the first time I went to KPMG, I didn't feel intimidated. I didn't feel like I shouldn't be here, and I think that value is what made me pick KPMG as a place to go to, of just being able to be myself. Obviously, I have a role where, you know, being myself and being a Black colleague is a big part of my role, but I think for the most part, that's kind of included in the values, and that's been really reflected in the African Caribbean network. So it's a really, really big network that has kind of different pillars have been developed over the years that I've been part of it. So it's sponsored by really senior leadership within the firm, which is always, you know, a plus to know that the firm and the senior leadership are behind it. They have pillars that reach out to the community. So they have a community lead. They also have recruitment and advancement. They also have leads in student recruitment that they work with, and then as well regional leads. I think sometimes we forget that, you know, there are Black colleagues in other cities and other regions that maybe don't have as much access to activities or events when we could go to events like the London one. So I think it's been great to have those regional leads in places like Scotland, and you know, in the southwest of England, and you know, in terms of activities, we're holding insight evenings with them across the different regions to engage with the Black talent across some of those universities. We're also running, funny that you mentioned, Rochelle, about the well-being, because we are actually talking about Black and being Black and dealing and managing mental health issues and just general well-being, and that's one of the talks that we have coming up actually really soon. So in terms of activity, there's also the kind of the networking side, just a place we can, you know, make friends, but in terms of having those difficult conversations or challenging conversations, that also happens as well. Kind of every few weeks there's something going on with the ACN in terms of talks, in terms of engagement, and I think just relationship building, which has been really key. We also have sometimes external speakers that come in and talk to us about different things, and we had very recently a podcast that was put out talking about how you approach talking about privilege with white colleagues. So if anyone's interested in that, you can find that as well, and that's been posted up. So in terms of the ACN, they're doing amazing work, and yeah, it's just been a privilege to be able to see it grow over the years. They also launched, I touched on, the Black Heritage Reverse Mentoring Program, which was, it's reverse mentoring. So I have a very senior tax partner that I mentor, and we catch up frequently and just talk about different issues, and he has to then kind of go back and put that into action to make sure that those work. So having that accountability and having that engagement with really senior colleagues, I think is amazing. And also the allyship as well. So the new program that launched, which is an allyship program where we are coached as you know, colleagues who were coming up by very senior partners, very senior leaders. So, you know, different types of things. So how we want to progress, career progression within the firm, you know, anything to do with coaching, that's in place. So anyone can apply to that, any Black colleague can apply to that and have that support. So I think that's been really great. So really focused on the progression and the retention part with the ACN, and I think that's been evident so far with how we've kind of been moving in the past year. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Just to say thank you so much. I can see the questions flooding through at the moment, so there's already been a number that have been sent through. We will get to those shortly. The next thing I guess I wanted to ask about, you know, February, March, April time, we saw the kind of I guess this heightened global interest of the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, after the kind of incident and kind of murder of George Floyd in the US. We've all known that this has been an issue for a lot longer than that. We've all been, you know, kind of interested in this kind of movement for a really long time, but it feels like now there is a kind of a global movement. It's kind of come far more to the forefront of people's minds in terms of everyday conversations. I'm really curious to understand, you know, how it's impacted you guys in the workplace. Have you felt more comfortable to kind of have conversations around race, around being Black, you know, in your workplace, and has that also emboldened and helped other Black colleagues of yours to kind of have similar conversations as well? Charlene, do you want to kick off with that one?
Yeah, I'll kick off with that. Yeah, I think it was definitely, it kind of felt like everything was coming to the surface. And I think the great thing is that because it was so visible, no one could look away. And it's about having that conversation about, you know, as a society, what are we like, and how does that feed into the corporate world, or how does that feed into the working world? And does it? And I think that was a really important conversation that we were able to have. On, I think, the week that it happened, we had a talk with all the African Caribbean members, with some of the leadership within KPMG. I mean, like, you know, really, really senior leadership, and just everyone was just able to share what they, you know, people ask questions like, what is the plan for us in this firm? How do we respond? And being able to share those honest things and say, you know what, there are situations where people might have experienced, you know, microaggressions within their career, and addressing that and making sure that things are put in place to ensure that colleagues are aware of things like unconscious bias, but actually taking it practically to make sure that things like this don't happen within their team. So I think there was definitely a real awakening for people to look within their teams and see, you know, how am I leading this team, or how am I engaging with this team? So for me, it was a question that I had and conversations that I had with my team. But like I said, within our team, it's a little bit different because we've been having some of these conversations. But I think in the wider firm, it was, you know, we, like I mentioned, we had the Black Lives Action Plan, which has been spearheaded by leadership, and also with the ACN, which has been amazing to see. And having people, you know, I was talking to someone within their team, they're sending out newsletters on a monthly basis to talk about race at work, and actually it being a conversation that people do not shy away from, but actually saying, if we all work together, we're all colleagues, and at the end of the day we have we want the best outcome for each and every person in the firm, and this is part of our core values, inclusion is part of our core values and how we do this, then this is a time for us to listen, because it doesn't just affect people outside of work. You know, people are having these experiences and coming to work, so how do we address that within the work environment?
Absolutely.
So I think for me, I've definitely seen that, and I hope that definitely continues. And like I mentioned, we have that Black Lives Actions Plan. So I think that has been looking really carefully at things like promotion, at things like how, when complaints are made, you know, how are they dealt with, and putting in processes and systems to be able to address those things so that it doesn't come up. And I think KPMG's done a really good job of addressing those issues really quickly, and with good kind of action that won't just be for now, but actually embedded in our values going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to pop it over to Michelle. Before we kick off, or before you answer, Michelle, because we're getting loads of questions coming through, and I'm just reading through. These questions are absolutely fantastic, and you know, I'd actually, you know, I think it would be great to get some of those. So, Michelle, I'm going to get you just to answer that question really quickly, and then we're going to jump straight into these questions because there's really fantastic ones coming through.
Yeah, so I think something with Sky, because of the sheer size and the volume and the impact that we have externally to the whole world, I think they were almost pushed into action to say, it's not enough to just say, yes, we're inclusive and have an award that, oh, we won Best Inclusion to 2019. What are you actually doing?
Yeah.
And I think you've definitely seen the executives have moved so quickly. All of a sudden it's Rochelle, I need this, I need that. And you're like, oh my God, what's going on? They really are saying, right, this is a big investment. This is something that we need to tackle racial injustice. What have we got in place? And I think Sky specifically always was focusing on, so I can see someone was talking about Black, is it only for Black people or persons of colour? With Sky specifically, it's always been for everybody. And I'll be honest about that. We've always looked at Black and minority ethnics as a whole. I think what this does, it kind of showcases how do we be better at it, and how do we put our roles, our company in front of Black people so that we can say this is accessible to you. So I think there's a little bit of a change in terms of I'll be honest, we don't do Black only events. We focus our marketing in that area, but we're very much like, it's open to all, but this is what we need. This is why we think you're a great fit for this. And this is the extra support. So we kind of phrase our wording very differently in terms of underrepresented, but there is always a push for Black students. And I think for us, you've noticed that around the organisation now, they have a diversity person that's popping up for each division. And I think take the win where you can, right? And it's making my job 10 times easier, because now I'm speaking to the finance division and they're like, right, we've now got a diversity person to support you. Let's have this conversation. I think, whereas before I would be the one banging the drum, like, let's look at the numbers, let's look at the hiring stats. We need to improve here and there. We need to post on, Black young professionals, or we need to utilize all of the networks. They wouldn't hear it before as much, but now it's very much, no, we have to do this. This is so important. And I think that is where the message has changed. There's a real awakening of, oh, wow, okay, this is really important. I'm not saying it wasn't important before, but it's, you need to be active, and it's not a one time or just in the moment. It is a continuous strategy of change, and it needs to be driven the same way we did the movement with LGBTQ+, with females, and to the point where we get to a stage where we're reporting on, this is what we're doing. And I think companies now understand the value in having a diverse workforce, and they're very open to, how do we do it? How can we improve our representation, whether that's on our hiring panels? So I think now they're just being really active in representation, and that wouldn't have been done before. So now when I do an assessment centre, the managers are actively going, right, I want a Black person. I need to have representation from everyone. I need to have an Asian person, a white person, so everybody has a voice. And I think the more we do that, the more it will become normal and natural, and then it's not an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we always talk about silence is complicit, and I think we're at a point now where organisations can no longer afford to be silent around this issue. It's too mainstream. It is too much in the public realm now for organisations to avoid it. And I've seen organisations that are very old school, I would say, in their thinking and in their traditions, actually taking steps and kind of doing initiatives that even quite frankly I've been surprised by. So that can only be a positive thing. Brilliant. Okay, well, we'll move on to some of these questions now, because as I said, there's loads of great questions coming through. If I could ask you guys just to be kind of 1 to 2 minutes for each question, so we can try and get through as many as possible. And I'll start from the top. So how can we find out more about the programs you both offer?
I can take that. So kpmgcareers.co.uk. And then if you go to graduate or undergraduate, depending on where you're at, and have a look at what's open there across the different regions. And also, if there are programs that are not yet open, you can sign up to our talent community. So if you scroll down the page halfway, there'll be a little box that says sign up to our talent community. Click that and you'll be alerted as soon as all the programs open. So for the Black Heritage Talent Insight program, which will probably be opening a little bit later in the year or early next year, it will alert you when that opens if that's what you're interested in. And also please do look out for our Insight evenings that are running across the UK. That will be coming out, so you can go on our events page, same place, and then have a look at that and sign up there.
Brilliant.
So same thing, go to careers.sky.com. All of our roles are live. That's graduates, apart from the apprenticeships. So graduate interns, our Insight events are happening right now. The Inclusion Week is actually live as well. So anyone who wants to find out about our internal networks that I've been speaking about, that event is over a week, 26th of October, and we'll be talking to Sky employees. So they're the real life kind of why they set up these networks, why it's important to Sky. You'll have head of people director speaking to you. We'll also be doing some skill sessions because we feel that in order to really be successful, they're to give back to the community. So there'll be like strength-based interview sessions, communication and branding. So if anyone's interested, they can sign up. That's actually open now. And that's, events at Sky.
Brilliant. Would I be right in saying as well that you guys post a lot of stuff on social media channels as well that people can follow? So Instagram and Facebook and the like, that people can go on and find out what's going on through those channels as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
So if you go on If you go onto Instagram for Life at Sky, it actually has the inclusion video. So if you hashtag Life at Sky, it will pull through all of the information, all of our videos, and it gives, I think it's a more authentic way of seeing what we're about, because people who are actually in the company, they will post and put hashtag Life at Sky. So that shows you everything.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is one of those really good questions that makes you kind of go back in time. And it's, what's the one piece of advice you would have given your younger self starting out in your career? Charlene?
Oh, it's always really hard when people say that because it's like one thing, just one. I would say, honestly, don't be afraid. And that captures a lot of things, but don't be afraid to make applications. Don't be afraid to be confident when you are at work and tell people what you've done and what you're doing. And I think that was what I'd say. Don't be afraid. I think when I was graduating, I didn't make certain applications, so I don't think I'd get through. Obviously now I look back and I'm like, most of these places don't look at just at academics. They look at you as a whole person. And so don't take yourself out of the race because you think you're not going to get through. If you want to apply for something, apply for it. If you don't get through, you'll learn something, and you never know, you might get through to it. So yeah, don't kind of listen to that fear that only certain people do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. Just go for it.
Absolutely.
So I would say my younger self, I wish I had got a mentor from a young age, because I think it really can shape you and guide you. And I think also it's fair to say to you guys out there, you will have a mentor for different stages of your life, okay? So you don't have to have one. But that kind of moment when you're like, I don't know what to do, I need someone to speak to, that kind of, big brother, big sister approach, I think that really helps, because I think there are times in an organization, it doesn't matter how diverse the organization is, sometimes your team just isn't, right? And you just need to have those conversations that's outside of your day-to-day. And those can be the most refreshing ones. And actually by accident, the other day, I was linked in with a new starting graduate. And I thought, oh my God, I graduated 10 years ago. This is going to be interesting. And the conversation we had was literally just, she was like, how do I kind of get into work? What do I do? How do I start talking? And you forget, because you've been doing it for so long, that there's no one that would tell her this. And I came off of that call and I felt I was buzzing. I was like, I need to do this more often. I need to give back. So speak to someone. Don't be afraid to have conversations, because they can really drive you. They can tell you what books to read. And actually you'll probably find that you'll be more focused as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that information is coming from somebody who's lived that life, who's walked that path as well. So it's not somebody telling you things that they think you should do, but it's actually saying, this is the journey that I've been on. So I can appreciate the journey that you're coming through right now, and kind of give you some really useful life advice that can help with that. Brilliant. So there's I'm going to start to group up some of the questions a little bit because they're overlapping just a little bit. So the next one is, in my job search, how can I tell if an employer is fully inclusive? And that kind of leads on to another question as well, which is, how can I tell if an employer is actually taking action and putting their diversity statements into practice? So this is, I think, just to kind of group this together, it's about being genuine. How can you tell if an employer is being genuine when it comes to the messages that they're putting out when it comes to diversity and inclusivity?
I can go first.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I can go first. I think if you're interviewing or even before then, I think just ask the question, ask them what they're doing. Like, be straight up, ask them what they're doing. And if they can't give you a clear answer, then you kind of have an answer. So I think that you should ask the question, especially now. And remember that you, as much as they are employing you, you're going to have to work there. So you have to make sure you're happy and you're comfortable as well. So ask the question about what they're doing. If you care about communities, you care about, progression, ask that question and see what they're doing. And if you're happy with that, then you can kind of move forward. But don't be afraid to ask them specifics, and yeah, just be bold about it, because they should have something to say, and if they don't, then you have your answer.
Social media is a very strong tool. I think it shows a lot, right?
Yeah.
Something with Sky is you can go on social media and have a look and look at what it's really like to work in a company. Employees posting, go on Glassdoor. Like, obviously there's always going to be people that are upset about something that's happened, so take it with a pinch of salt. Look at their policies, ask to look at what kind of policies do they have in place? How do they support employees? What groups they have? So on their inclusion pages, what are they actually promoting? And then look at their social media, and is it matching up? Can you see a diverse workforce? Look back on the previous graduate population. Do you see any Black faces or people of colour? If you don't, then you can say, well, why is that? What are you doing about it?
Yeah.
And just bear in mind that all companies also it's quite tough, and they also still have to hire the best people for the job. So sometimes it is a situation where their hiring numbers are small, they may not get the right demographic coming through. There are lots of different things, but you have the right to ask the questions. And so you can ask about policies, what do they have in place? Is there mentoring? How do you support us? What networks? Once you've had those conversations, and I'd say it's harder to have that when you haven't been successful in the application process, but definitely when you're doing the interview, like Charlene said, you are also assessing whether this is the right job for you. You have every right to say to the assessor, put them on the spot and be like, right, so what are you doing? How will I get this information? If they don't have it to hand, they can then send you a link later on.
Yeah, and I think that kind of initiative and that proactiveness, I personally think assessors appreciate that. I think when you can ask those questions, and again, for everyone listening, don't feel like you're already at a disadvantage because you're Black or because you're a person of colour. And I think that's all too often what happens. You feel, oh, I don't want to ask that question because I'm already at a disadvantage sitting here, and I don't want to make the situation, put myself in a kind of negative situation. Not at all. Go in there with that confidence that that Shelley and Rochelle have spoken about, and ask your questions. Like the guy said, if they've got an answer for you, they'll be able to say straight there and then what that kind of innovation, what that solution, what that procedure, whatever it is that they're doing within their workplace is, and they'll be able to stand behind it and they'll be proud of it because they'll know that they're making a difference. If they can't, then that might not be an organisation that you want to look further in. Just conscious of time, so we've got 8 minutes left and the questions are still coming through. So there's a really interesting one around people of colour versus Black, not versus, but as a kind of a different reference point. And this is one that could probably we could spend the rest of the afternoon talking about, and kind of not the kind of 4 minutes that I'm going to allow you guys to have. But really quickly, we kind of the lines get blurred a lot, don't they, when we kind of talk about diversity, whether we group people together as a non-white group, or whether we then start to look at those different ethnicities and kind of break that down and appreciate that actually each group have different needs and that we're not kind of one big homogenous collective. And I certainly know from my background being of Indo-Caribbean and Afro-Caribbean descent, I don't look like a Black person, but then I know that I identify more with that than I probably do with anything else because of the way that I've been brought up. So it's kind of, it's very, very interesting. But what's your take on it? And do you think that you can have, do you think that we should be treated as one homogenous group, or that actually there are specific things that are needed for each group within that kind of collective? Rochelle, I'll go to you first.
This
Sorry.
It's always a tough one, right? Because I think it's really important to understand that each group has their own struggles and different needs. So one thing I could put my hands up and say is, if you look at the demographic, we've always been told BAME, and everyone hates it, right? And it's a really tough space, because when you do diversity and you're looking at initiatives and the statistics that are pulled from like a recruitment system, it pulls it out separately. But then as a business and executives, they go BAME. But then when you break the numbers down, your hiring for BAME would be nearly 50%. But if you look at Black, it's a lot smaller. So I think it's really, for me, it is different, but it's also acknowledging each group and understanding their struggles and what they need from you. So I would ensure that if I have Asian graduates, I have Chinese graduates, I have Black graduates, what do you need from me to be successful? Where are your skill gaps? And take them as individuals. I think that's where it's hard to do across the whole of the recruitment cycle. But I think once they're hired, you can kind of look at how you work with that group, and they can then flag any concerns. But I do think that we just need to be more conscious that everybody has their own journey and everyone's an individual. And even as a Black female, I can't speak for all the others. And I think that's something that they don't get at times. Yeah. And it's almost, oh yeah, well, you're a diversity partner, you're Black, so that means whatever you suggest should work for all Black people. No. My journey is very different to Charlene's. So I think I've become the voice that said, listen to all, because we all have different thoughts and feelings. And that's the same for our Chinese students, and they all need different things to Asians. And if you even break down the Asian population, there's so many nuances within that even annoys me, because they're all branded Asian, but there's so many different Asians. So I do think, as organisations, we do need to get better at not grouping, because I think we all have our own experiences and culture, and it dilutes it, in my opinion.
No, really great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, I have like 1 minute, I'm sure, but yeah. I guess for us at KPMG, looking at that, and maybe because, you know, it's accountancy, professional services, a lot of it is reviewing and also providing specific solutions. And so I think for us, about 3 years ago, we did make the decision to move away from kind of the BAME term to specifically Black heritage. This is who we want to engage with. This is the talent that we see, and they're great. And this is the group we want at KPMG. And we look at data, you look at numbers, and like Rochelle mentioned, sometimes BAME is looking great, but then you want to make sure that with that Black heritage group, we are specifically engaging with Black heritage. So anyone who identifies themselves as Black, doesn't, we're not going to be like, you're not Black, but anyone who identifies themselves as Black or Black mixed heritage is kind of the what we mean when we're talking of Black heritage. So we specifically say Black heritage as opposed to BAME at KPMG, kind of for those reasons.
Brilliant, thank you. We're getting so close to the end, but there's so many good questions still. So I'm going to ask you for really, really quick answers to both of these. I can try and fit 2 more questions in. The first one, because I think it's really important, because it's a term that's going to get used a lot and people might not necessarily understand what it is, but the term allyship. Could you just explain very, very quickly? And what I'll do is, Rochelle, I'll get you to answer this one, and then Charlene, I'll get you to answer the next question.
No problem.
But Rochelle, can you just really quickly explain what an ally is and what the term allyship means?
I think this is a very individual. So that's one thing I will stress about being an ally. It's around someone who's happy to be educated, to understand, to be open, and really think about educating themselves on matters, and also supporting the movement. That's what I deem an ally, someone that's really open-minded, that listens. They don't have to have all the answers. And I think this is really key, that they're also learning. So it's about them saying, okay, what do I need to do, and how can I promote this in a positive manner to other people? And it's not just about listening and educating yourself, but educating others. And that's what I would call a real ally, someone that actively goes out there and shares their experiences, what they've learned, to a demographic that wouldn't ordinarily have heard it from us directly. Because sometimes I think your white colleagues can be the most powerful allies if they have the right message, because it is well received, and it doesn't always be received in the same way from us, because they just think, oh, here we go again, you're just complaining, but they haven't even heard the message. So I think it's really key to have diverse allies, shall we say.
Absolutely. Hopefully, to whoever wrote that question, a fantastic question, and hopefully that's given you a little bit more of an understanding as to how you can look for allies as well within your organisation. Okay, I think this is going to have to be our last question, guys. There's two around sort of a very similar theme here, so I'll kind of group them both together. But one is, what tips do you have for Black heritage students looking to move into underrepresented industries? And sort of secondly, just so if you could touch on this point as well, is oh, sorry, I've just lost the question now. There's so many questions coming through, there's loads.
Apparently you can run till 4:35.
Oh, can I? Oh, fantastic, brilliant. Oh yeah, here we go. How can we, Black people who are educated, negate or overcome discrimination and racism when applying for jobs? This problem is very apparent in most organisations. So I think it's around about how you look for opportunities, and then in that recruitment process, how as Black people can you navigate your way through that?
Do you want me to take that one? So I guess the first thing is I just want to, I never want anybody who's maybe uni, a grad, postgrad, whatever, to kind of see themselves being Black going into a particular type of job as a problem, almost like a minus when you're going in. I think that I don't want anyone to kind of think like that. Of course, there are sometimes challenges, and we all work in different industries, so we would have known. But I think what's really important is to know now that for some organizations they do blind recruiting, so it's just based on your applications and just based on what you put in there. But at the same time, on the flip side, we also have targeted engagement, and we want to make sure that we are engaging because we want Black talent. So once we engage with that pool of Black talent, when you apply, we want you, but then when you apply, you will just be looked at by, you know, what you've done, and you know, by, you know, whatever app you put in your application. So it's fair in that way, and the way that we want to make sure it stays fair and balanced is to make sure that we're continuing to engage, and run skill sessions and run those insights and provide mentoring, and different kind of not just programs, but just building into our BAU to make sure that we're always attractive and engaging with Black students, because that's what we want. And then I think the other thing that I would say, honestly, is just the standard kind of practice and prep. And if you are moving into an industry where you don't know anybody who does what you want to do, or maybe you don't see anybody who is of Black heritage in that industry, honestly, don't be afraid to be the first. Get whatever mentoring and support you can from whoever knows the industry well. So they don't necessarily have to be Black if you don't know anyone who's Black. Get whatever knowledge. I mean, honestly, you can reach out to people on LinkedIn. There's always people who are willing to mentor people and build that relationship. Get the knowledge, and then just kind of make sure that you bring yourself and know what you are talking about. And that's the way to do it. But don't be afraid to be the first. Don't feel like, oh, I can't do this because, or I don't want to, I don't know how it's going to be. It's somebody has to take the step. So get your knowledge, make sure that you do what you can, speak to whoever has knowledge and has knowledge of that industry, and then kind of know what you're doing and put yourself out there. But definitely don't think of it as, oh, I don't know if I should, or I can't. I think take that step, and then once you're there, other people will come. So I think don't take yourself out of the equation, basically.
It's 100% a mindset, I think.
Yeah.
And I would always say, if you get to a position where you've got to the final stage and that company turns around and doesn't hire you because you're Black, you're not supposed to work there.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm sorry. And that's how, I know that seems like, okay, but you can't just say that. But in my mind, this has happened for a reason. It is not part of my plan. Let me keep moving and work somewhere that are going to value me, that are going to understand my needs and my wants. So it's kind of, there's two parts to this, right? Go in there, saying, I'm the best person for this job and I'm going to get this job, and always have that mentality. But if it gets to that point where you feel uncomfortable and they have blocked you, it is not for you.
No, and you don't want to be there anyway.
and obviously 10 years in, I can have that mentality, and as a young person, you're like, but it's unfair, and I get it, but don't let anyone stop you, and put out that fire. Keep that fire.
That's a really strong message to kind of wrap this up on. Is I always think in terms of leverage. What kind of leverage do you have as a candidate? And sometimes your leverage is influenced by your social surroundings and by politics and by things that are going on. And what I would really say to all of you out there listening right now is, we haven't always had leverage in the past, but in this moment in time, we have got leverage, and actually
use it.
You are the candidates that people want now. Exactly, right. All these organizations, obviously we've got two fantastic organizations here talking to you today, but we represent hundreds of organizations across the Group GTI business, and we know, and I can hand on heart tell you that every single one of those clients that we're talking to are trying to have these conversations with us right now, and are kind of running more of these events, and you are the candidates that they want through coming through these applications and to make those hires. So there's never been a better time, as weird as that might sound, to kind of I say that kind of amidst the coronavirus pandemic, but in terms of people, clients and companies wanting to attract and hire Black talent, kind of any ethnic talent, everybody's on that boat right now. So don't feel like that's a blocker in any way. It is 4:35. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up. Look, I want to thank both Rochelle and Charlene for taking part in today's discussion. If you do, guys out there, audience, if you do want to connect with any of us, Charlie mentioned LinkedIn. You can find all of us on LinkedIn. Add us, send us a message if you have any further questions. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer all the questions today, but they've been some really fantastic questions coming through, and it really shows us that you guys are really thinking about this, and you're really kind of serious about how you want to approach this and how you want to move forward with your job search. And we wish you the best of luck. So thank you all again, and